Hello friends, for today's video we're going to be doing the Finally Fall book tag, and because tags tend to be more conversational and chit-chatty and casual, but second because this one specifically is very tied to the fall season, I wanted to start by posing a question to all of you that is actually outside of the typical tag questions. Do you have any traditions that you like to partake in this time of year, whether it be by yourself or with friends or with family? Is there anything you like to bake? Is there anywhere you like to go or anything you like to do this time of year? I don't probably have anything nearly as wholesome and lovely as all of you, because I think a lot of times the fall season, part of what makes this time of year so wonderful is the changing leaves, the changing weather, going to pumpkin patches, and I think all of that is great. I don't live in an area where fall is particularly visible in a pretty way. The weather definitely starts getting way better, and as I'm wont to do, I always have to bring up how hot it is here. And this time of year, it's actually starting to cool off. You can actually go outside. It's under 100 degrees in the evening, and you're like, oh, I can go for a walk outside, yay. And one thing that I've been doing this year is there's a park nearby that has these really cute birds, and I know that I feel like very old lady coded, and I'm okay with that because old people are great. But anyway, obviously young people can like bird watching too. There's a park by our house, and Sean and I have been walking at this park. And there's this really beautiful bird, and I was looking into it, and I think it's called a vermilion flycatcher, but I've named this one Edwin. And Edwin is in the same tree every single evening, and he is so cute. And because our leaves don't really change into pretty colors, at least his feathers are kind of fall themed. So Edwin is there. Theodora is the girl bird of, I believe, the same kind, and I've seen her. And then there's a little hummingbird that likes to hang out in this tree. So as much as possible in the evenings, I've been trying to go to this park so that I can see these little birds. And it turns out there's actually a lot of other of the same kind of birds, so I've been naming each of them because they have their own little trees. I accidentally started naming them with letters that are vowels, so Edwin is there. There's Alexander. Sean named one of them Ulysses, and then Oscar. So those are the names of the 4 vermilion flycatchers that we have seen at the park, and I love them. But anyway, that's kind of just rooted in, oh, I can finally go outside now and I can enjoy the outdoors. But also, as far as things around the house, Luna Bear, I switched out her bandana, so she has her fall bandana now. What always happens every year in August, I always tell Sean, hey, I think I'm gonna start putting out fall decor, and Sean's always like, fall's not even, it's over a month away, and I'm like, yeah, but it'll be here soon. And we have this debate every year. I just sneak little things out until once fall is officially here, then all of it's out. So that way I don't have to do it all at once. That's my rationale. But really it's just, I'm in denial that it's still summer and it's still hot, so I just want to self-soothe. The things besides Luna's bandana is we have a little mug tree that typically Sean uses because Sean's the coffee drinker. And I just start swapping in fall looking mugs. And you know those little things that are cute little birds that have coats and things like that, or there'll be little squirrels, some woodland type creatures. I'll start putting those on our bookshelves and things like that. I know it is such a stereotype for a bookworm to be like, oh my gosh, but the fall, am I right? But that is a little bit how I am, and I'm fine with it. I'm happy. I'm so happy the weather's starting to get nice. And on that note, let's actually now start talking about fall in reference to books with this tag. So I'll have all the tag questions in the description bar in case you'd like to answer any of these. But also, selfishly, I am going to be looking to see if any of you leave any delicious-looking recipes. Just saying. In fall, the air is crisp and clear. Name a book with a vivid setting. I have a few different answers to this question. One of them would be A Forgery of Fate. I just thought this one was so enchanting and lovely. For a while, you're not actually in the underwater part of the story, which is, I think, the part that, for me, I think of when I think of the vivid setting within this book. But you don't start there for a while, and I actually really liked the sort of slow beginning that we got with this because it really endeared me to the characters. It made me feel for their circumstances, which then made the conflict later on matter that much more because you want our character to have peace in her life, and you want her family to be together, and you want everybody to just have a nice, comfortable life. And you feel that strongly because of the fact that it started slow. But it does mean that the vivid setting doesn't come until a little bit later, but when it did, it definitely did not disappoint. I really enjoy the way that this author writes her worlds in general, or writes her stories within the same world, because some of them are part of the same world. I really like the way that she does it. There are a couple that I wanted to note that I've read this year, that even though these didn't necessarily personally work for me, I still feel like they qualify for this question. One of them would be the Enchanted Greenhouse. I describe this very much as feeling like we could have a Pixar adaptation of this, and I think it would be very, very sweet and wholesome. And the setup for this one is that you have this character who has awakened after a number of years being turned into a statue, so she's kind of unsure of what's going on around her, but she has found herself in the middle of this area with just greenhouse after greenhouse. And each of the greenhouses has different kinds of plants, and some of the plants have sentience. And so the way that everything comes to life is very, very much fitting into the cozy fantasy umbrella, which is what I would categorize this book as. And really, I think that some kind of adaptation could make this come to life. Not that it's not already got a lot of life in it as a book, but just how visual everything feels, I think would translate to some kind of movie really nicely. But it's in part because the setting is so vivid. And then the last one, I think there's actually a variation of the wording of this question. This particular set of questions, the wording just says vivid setting, and I think there have been times where it says a lovely and vivid setting, or an enchanting and vivid setting, or something like that. So I'm just thinking vivid, and that would be Perdido Street Station, because first, the environment itself feels like its own character, and also this author seems as though they cannot resist telling you about the setting over and over and over again. It's very grimy, it's very disgusting, it almost feels like a reflection of the worst of ourselves. He finds more and more ways to creatively describe the setting, and it does result in it being very, very vivid. Second question, though, moving on from there. Nature is beautiful but also dying. Name a book that is beautifully written but also deals with a heavy topic like loss or grief. This year, I'm taking just the concept of a heavy topic, and I am going to mention some that do have things like loss or grief, but there are a few books I wanted to note that I think they just tackle heavy topics in general. So one of them would be To Shape a Dragon's Breath. I am looking at the concept of loss or grief slightly differently, but I still think it applies in this instance. To Shape a Dragon's Breath is not hiding whatsoever that it is essentially our own world, but with a slightly altered history in the sense that there are dragons as well. In the same way that something like Naomi Novik's Temeraire series is taking a time in history, the Napoleonic era, and it's having dragons as part of the Air Force, something similar, I would say, could be applied to this story. And in it, you are following a young woman who is part of an indigenous peoples, and she is being pulled away from her tribe to go to this school, and they're trying to force her to assimilate, essentially. And you see within her family unit the way that the grandmother has just found time and time and time again that no matter how much they give in, no matter how perfect they are behaving, quote unquote, they are always going to be betrayed in some sense. And more of their culture is going to be taken away. More and more of their children are going to be taken away from them until they basically don't exist at all. And so the grandmother in particular, but also you just see from our main character as well, but just the family unit, they are feeling this sense of loss because it just seems as though there is nothing they can do and that they are consistently being pushed down over and over and over again. So in that sense, I think it's absolutely tackling the concept of loss and grief, the feeling of we no longer have what we used to because it's been taken away from us, and it's continuously being taken away from us. So it's more of like a collective loss and grief. On top of there being so many other things that are tackled within this story, which is why it's been one of my favorites that I've picked up this year. We also have the 7-Year Slip, which I can't think of too many books that better fit the concept of this question, because 100% you are looking at a character who is dealing with loss and grief. It's very upfront right from the start. Our main character, this is a contemporary romance if you don't know. Our main character has lost her aunt, who she cared very much about and she loved very deeply, but the details surrounding that loss you discover as you read through the story. And it is something that you might want to look into ahead of time if things to do with the death of a family member are traumatic for you. Maybe give yourself a heads up, but if it's something that you find that you don't need to have some kind of heads up about, then avoid seeing spoilers and go into it without having too much revealed to you, because I think the impact then just strikes that much harder. We also have Say You'll Remember Me, another contemporary romance that I actually think Of the Abby Jimenez books that I've read, this one to me was actually, I don't think that the writing was as polished, in my opinion, as the other books I've read by this author. I've read the books in I think the series is just called Part of Your World. I use air quotes because it's a series of basically standalones, like a lot of contemporary romance books, where you just end up following a character, and in the next one, it's somebody that character somewhat knows in some way. So that's what I mean by series. But I've read the books in that. This one is separate, and the reason I don't think it's as well written is because the themes of the story are very much rooted in our memories and the things that lead to us building memories and what actually matters in life. And this is very much kind of shoved in our main character's face, and she is forced to confront this when her mother, at quite a young age, ends up having dementia. I believe dementia specifically, but she is losing her memories as a result of a head injury, and everybody in the family has to kind of rally to ensure that she has the best quality of life possible. But as a result of the fact that she doesn't always have a firm grasp on reality, she doesn't always know where she is or what's going on, she at times can actually put herself very much in danger, and her sleep schedule isn't always very strong, and it's very taxing. And for anybody that's taking care of a loved one who is experiencing anything even close to that, you know that it can be very difficult. But the way that this ties back to the writing is the book kind of reminds you over and over and over again what the themes are. And I do find that I tend to prefer a little bit when you just sort of allow us to gather those themes. And I want to be clear, I'm not upset about themes being very obvious and overt. I just don't want them to be obvious and overt and then be told about them over and over again, because it's like, I mean, I know. But this also ties into the romantic parts of the story in the way that the character is realizing that if she wants to have certain things that she holds close to her heart as she ages, or as maybe her memory might not be what it was, she wants to ensure that she doesn't ever take life for granted. But there are other circumstances that keep her and the love interest apart, and you understand why they are in the situation that they are in. So it's very much we kind of have to make love a choice. And I actually do appreciate when stories do that, as opposed to just you can just fall in love just because you're really lusty for each other. But it doesn't change the fact that I thought it wasn't the strongest of, in my opinion, Abby Jimenez's works in the writing and how the themes were delivered. That said, it still very much is dealing with a difficult topic. Next question, question 3. Fall is back to school season. Share a nonfiction book that taught you something new. I have unfortunately only read one nonfiction book this year, and that would be Devil in the Grove. I will go into more detail about both Perdido Street Station and Devil in the Grove with a video I'm doing with my husband, a book swap video. So be on the lookout if that sounds fun, but I haven't had a chance to go as in depth with either of these books. In fact, this might be the first time I've mentioned Devil in the Grove. But this is following the Groveland Boys. It's a situation in the US where we're looking at a few different, you could say, players on the board, one of whom would be Thurgood Marshall, who was a very pivotal individual for America. And you're looking at a time when he was a lawyer, and he gave a lot of people hope because of the way that he was able to push back against a lot of the prejudice, and much worse than just prejudice, the acts that people would take as a result of racism. He was somebody who actually gave people hope because he was representing them in the courtroom, and also in a very, very, very unjust system that was working against a lot of people, especially in the South. And you are looking at a specific case where the evidence is manufactured, and there's so many indications that what is being claimed is not what actually happened, but it doesn't matter. They just want to put these people to death regardless. People try to storm, whenever somebody is kept in jail, people try to storm the jailhouse so that they can do all sorts of horrific things to them. Horrific things are done to them anyway to try and pull out a confession, but it's a confession under torture. Some of the individuals weren't even at the place when it happened, and things like that. So I almost hesitate to say it taught me something new, in the sense that most of us are aware that these sorts of things happened. However, the specifics of this particular situation were new to me. Question 4 says, in order to keep warm, it's good to spend some time with the people we love. Name a fictional family or household or friend group that you'd like to be a part of. I feel like when I was looking at these questions and I was coming up with my answers for them, a little bit I was like, how long do I wait until I mention Apothecary Diaries? And the answer is question 4. I'm bringing it up now. I so badly wish that I could be involved in all the shenanigans. I want to be friends with Mao Mao, which is difficult because I feel like Mao Mao, she's very selective in who she ends up giving any of her time and attention to. And it means you earn it more, you know. But Apothecary Diaries, if you don't know, it is... I always feel like I have to give this long explanation, so I'll try to keep it brief. Originally, it was a light novel series, which are books, if you don't know. And then it was adapted into both an anime and 2 different manga, which is a little confusing, but the point is the source material is the collection of light novels, which I have been devouring at a ridiculous pace. I was supposed to only read a certain amount at a time and then do discussions with my husband and my friends over on my side channel. And I've read so far beyond, but it's okay. I'm obsessed with it, and I don't mind going back and looking at my tabs and refreshing for the parts that we're going to be talking about. If you're interested in joining in on that read along, you are welcome to. But within the light novels, you are following this woman named Mao Mao. She's a very young woman, and she has been kidnapped and sold into servitude into this rear palace where you have an emperor and all of the ladies in waiting and consorts. And there's a lot of politicking and a lot of intrigue. And Mao Mao is somebody who has an extreme passion for poisons, for plants, for all of these things. She's very, very obsessed with these things. And she's very knowledgeable. And there are some poisonings that have been happening as of late, or at least it would seem to be poisonings, and she kind of can't help but notice and take interest, which catches the attention of some people that are high-ranking who kind of pull her in, even though she doesn't want to be involved whatsoever. They pull her in, and they utilize her expertise to basically help solve mysteries. And it is so fun, and Mao Mao is the best, and I love so many of the characters in this story. And it's great, not only because Mao Mao is a fantastic protagonist, but so many of the other characters just have so much life with them. So I would say these characters, but then also I have to mention Spy Family. If you haven't checked out Spy Family, I don't think anything puts, especially my husband, in a better mood, but me in a better mood and makes us laugh more than Spy Family. It's just so funny and so silly. And then out of nowhere, sometimes you'll get hit with this really heartbreaking moment, or you'll get hit with something that's extremely poignant. And Spy Family is an absolute blast. So I would say Spy Family. I really want to be a part of this family. I don't know how I would be, because they already have kind of all of they have, you know, the child and the parents and the dog. So I don't know what role I would fulfill. The cool aunt, maybe. I'll be the cool aunt. The next question is, the colorful leaves are piling up on the ground. Show us a pile of fall-colored spines, which I will insert here. For question 6, I've actually seen variations of this question. Some of them are just to name a heartwarming and cozy read, and then others are to name a story where somebody is telling you a story. And so I'm going to stick to the one that is about a cozy and heartwarming read and say A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. Cozy fantasy can be very hit or miss for a lot of people, including myself. Sometimes it's a little too cutesy, and I appreciate it, but it doesn't quite work for me. I'd actually say that's part of the reason why the Enchanted Greenhouse didn't quite work. And other times it just hits, and you feel like, in the stereotypical way it's described, kind of a warm hug as you're reading it. And I definitely felt that with A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. I also felt this with the other book that this author, a lot of people hype up, which would be The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. Both of them, I think, are absolutely darling. Question 7 is, what is an old favorite that you'd like to return to? And my answer for this one would be Bloodsong. I put this one on my TBR for this year because I have just been dying to get back to Bloodsong and then actually finally finish the series. It's not an old favorite in the sense that it's this story I picked up as a kid that I reread every year or anything like that. I don't really have that habit, but I do have a lot of series that I haven't completed and that I want to reread the first ones and continue on with. I did this with the David Bod series, and I ended up absolutely adoring it. One of my favorite series. I'm hopeful that something similar will happen with, I believe the series name is Raven Shadow, unless that's a different, there's another series in this world. But regardless, I'm hoping that's what's going to happen with Bloodsong. And then last for today, we are supposed to kind of answer what are some cozy accessories that we love to have when we're reading. And I think a lot of people have similar answers about they like having a cozy blanket or they like having a certain kind of beverage or something like that. I'm going to go in kind of a different direction here. So I do enjoy all those things that I just said, a cozy blanket, being in a cozy chair, all that stuff. But something I've been really, really liking recently is reading while I walk on the treadmill, which, you know, I know it's not very exciting or interesting or aesthetic. But recently, I got a case for my iPad. I don't use a Kindle. I have an iPad. And I really rarely read digitally because I prefer a physical copy. And I also like audiobooks, but recently in reading the Apothecary Diaries light novels, not all of them have had print editions just yet, and because I have been reading so many of them, I'm past the point of the print editions that are out, and my library has digital copies of the ones that come after. So I've just been downloading those and reading them on specifically the library app Hoopla, and then I just turned the size of the text to be really big so that as I'm walking I can easily read. And then I'll put on headphones and I've actually made recently a few different read with me, study with me style videos over on my side channel with different styles of music. So some of them are very calm jazz, one of them is very calm piano music, and then another one's more kind of adventure fantasy sounding music. And I'll put my headphones on, I'll listen to those, and then I'll just read while walking on the treadmill. And my, I guess, cozy accessory is the case I got for my iPad, because now I feel like I can carry it around with me and not worry about... I don't actually have cases for my phones and stuff either. I just put them usually in my pocket. For my iPad, I finally got a case for it. And what's nice is the case I got is very sturdy, but also if I'm not reading on the treadmill, the back you can pop out and you can use it as a handle or you can use it to set it up. And I can just hear as I'm saying all this that a lot of you are like, you mean like a regular Kindle holder or a regular iPad holder? Like, it's not anything new or interesting, but I have really liked having it. It's really nice. And so now whenever, for example, if I'm not reading Apothecary Diaries, but I'm reading something from the library where I have the audiobook, but I don't have the physical copy, but it's available to me digitally, then now I'll listen to the audiobook instead of one of the study with me, read with me things that I've made for noise kind of cancellation, just listening to the music. I'll just listen to the audiobook instead if I have an audiobook available, and then I'll try to download the actual digital copy from my library and then read. So basically my iPad case is my answer. My iPad case, my read with me, study with me's that I've made, and then also, I guess, walking pad / treadmill. That's not really an accessory, but that's what I've been really, really enjoying for getting some reading in. Besides just actually sitting and reading, this is a fun way to actually feel like I can be kind of active at the same time. That's it for the Finally Fall book tag. As noted before, I'll have all the questions in the description bar, and I mentioned this while answering the questions, but this is a slight variation of other Finally Fall book tags I've seen, so if you see other people answering these slightly differently, that's the reason why. Anyway, I'll have any videos where I go more in depth about the books themselves in the description bar down below. Thanks so much for watching though. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later.